identification. This is a copy of a tape made by Rex Morgan of part of the symposium on the Shroud of Turin in Hong Kong. This tape was taken on the 3rd of March 1986 at St John's Anglican Cathedral Hall, and it contains an address together with questions and answers and discussion by Father Peter Rinaldi.
Anything like that. What I saw in my 50 and more years of experience with the Shroud is fast becoming a highlight in that experience. Who would have ever thought that I would live to see here in Hong Kong, where I began to see this morning, this magnificent exhibit, the people that came, the lively interest that one could note right from the start, even in people who walked in casually without even expecting to see what they saw. And the look at the program, I really feel at this point that coming all the way from New York and then Turin to Hong Kong was worth more than I find that it is very easy for me to conclude at this point that I am the oldest one here. Now, there are very few advantages to being old, but occasionally one has some reward in himself. For instance, I am the only one here who personally knew the first photographer of the Shroud, Secondo Pia, who literally gave the world the first sight in that complex mystery which is the Shroud. I am the only one here who met, and even there, I was just a youngster, speak to Dr. Paul Vignon, who, as you know, was the first great syndonarist that ever came into the picture in these early years. I happen to have met and spoken with Dr. Pierre Barbet, who literally gave us the foundation of what were to be the great discoveries, pathologically speaking, of the Shroud. And my relationship with Giuseppe Enrique, whose marvelous photographs are still a source of wonder right now, this time after more than 50 years. So these are the advantages I come to you with, and I assure you that you will never be able to imagine what my feelings are as I sit here in Hong Kong, in the world, in a city where literally the world meets, ethnically speaking. Seeing what I see, hearing what I hear, is something indescribable. You might know, too, that I first became interested in the Shroud as a young old boy. I shall not ever forget the day when, having finished serving Mass, I must have been 12 or 13, in the chapel of the Shroud, I dared ask the priest, now what's up there? He looked at me askance and he said, you are altar boy in the cathedral, and you do not know the act up there. And then this elderly man spoke to me about that thing. But with such feeling, and in such an interesting way that I think my mind and heart literally opened to the shroud that day. Well, I went to the States, a young boy, and I carried a bit of that in my heart. I landed at Fordham College, and I remember asking one of my Jesuit teachers, "What do you think about it?" He looked at me. He said, "Before we talk about this, why don't you read the chapter in the Catholic Encyclopedia about the subject?" I hunch he wanted to read it too before he Well, as it happened, I knew what the Catholic Encyclopedia was saying about the Shroud because I had read it. It was written by a Jesuit, Father Herbert Thurston. I did not say anything to my teacher. I simply said I will. I promptly went back to the article in the Catholic Encyclopedia again. When a few days later I went to my teacher and I said to him, "You know, I read the article, and guess what? It was written by one of your confreres, well, Jesuits." He looked at me, and do you know what he told me? He said, "Look, oh," and I said, "and would you know, Father Thurston, who wrote the article, is not in any way in favor of the authenticity." He looked at me and he said, "If this is what Thurston said, then that's what you should believe." Well, you probably heard about Father Thurston. He was the priest in England, just a priest, who elected himself the iconoclast and the destroyer of any relics in the Catholic Church. And he wrote against all kinds of relics, including San Gennaro's flowing blood, Naples, and whatever. And when he wrote the article for the Catholic Encyclopedia on the Shroud, he made sure that he put a big question mark on everything that had been said up to then. Well, the story is that his superior, the rich father of the Jesuit convention in England, was dying. And Herbert Thurston went to visit him. And the dying superior well knew what he was about, writing against every conceivable and possible relic in the Catholic Church. He looked at him and said, "One last word to you, dear Herbert. Please, spare the Trinity." Spare the Trinity. Please. Well, as it happened after my university course, having decided to become a Salesian, never regretted it. There's a long story behind that. My good superior said, "Now, young man, you go back to Turin, because that's where you're going to do your theology." And I went to Turin. Guess what? That was the time where unexpectedly, unbelievably, the Holy Shroud was exposed for public veneration. Now notice this. It had been displayed in 1931. The relic, I don't like to use the word relic, but occasionally I use it anyway, had been in the keeping of the House of Savoy. And the custom, century-old custom, the House of Savoy, was that at any time, Crown Prince was married, the crown would be displayed publicly as part of the celebration. So the late King Umberto II died a short 2 years before. Married that year, 1931, during the Shrouds displayed at the time I was here. I was in the States. No one expected the relic to be shown again at any time before the end of the century. It was known that it was shown on the other side, but not more than once or twice at the very most. But would you believe it? While I was a young seminarian in Europe, in 1933, Pope Pius XI chose to make the year a holy year. Why? Because it had been said, and partly proved, with a question, that was the 19th centennial of the death and resurrection of Christ, 1933. 3 years old. Anyway, so the Holy Father himself suggested to the Archbishop of Turin, why, any time in which the Shroud should be shown, it is 1933, the 19th centennial of the death of Christ. And I shall not ever forget, because, as I told you, in some strange, mysterious way, Shroud had always been in my heart. Ever since the day that old priest told me what it was for. And I shall not ever forget my thinking then, my goodness, the burial cloth of Jesus. Will I ever be able to see it? 1933. And I was a young seminarian and repeatedly served Mass as a young seminarian at the display of the cathedral, display. But even better than that, on the last day of the exposition, September 24, 1933, I was quietly at my books studying when someone came. Father, wants to see you. What did I do? I've gone on to the office, and the director says to me, you speak. Of course, I was thinking. You do speak English too. Yes, I was a mistake. 5 years or more. Yes. Oh, wonderful. And then what for? He said, tonight at 11 o'clock in the cathedral, before the shroud is put back in its vault, there will be a symposium. There'll be a lot of people, some people from England, and Ireland. There'll be a lot of French speakers from Italians. And they asked for someone who would handle these 3 languages because several of the speakers wouldn't speak the whole language and expect someone to do so translated. I said, my God, this is unreal. I should be the one who was. Everybody in the seminary was beginning to point to me as the man of the shroud. Because I used to talk about it, I gave some quiet little lecture on my own, imagine in those days, to some of the non-believing confreres, you know. And what I really marveled at is that what I thought was nothing but a religious relic, sacred beyond telling, could be of interest to scientists. And sure enough, among the scientists was Dr. Barnet, was Dr. Vignon, and were some of the earliest men whose work on the Shroud left us a legacy on which we are still building now, as you know. And it was my lot to come as close to anything concerning the interest of science in the Shroud as anyone could, because occasionally the speaker would stop talking and I would have to do some translation on behalf of those who could not speak a particular language. It came as a revelation to me, and it was actually through the kindness of some of these men. Dr. Bardet, great surgeon of the Hayes Institute of St. Joseph in Paris. Dr. Vignon, photographer Henriette, the one whose photographs have lived. I began to put together a number of some information. And remembering only too well that few people, if any, knew anything about the Shroud of the United States, would guess what the young multi-seminarian decided to do. Why not an article? Why not write an article? 1934. Now, to what magazine might I dare send this article? Not to the Jesuit magazine, American, because the moment they find that their thirst is being, they would never publish it. Okay. Someone suggested a national magazine called The Sign is no longer going now. And I did. There were no planes in Australia. A letter could take between sending it and getting a reply more than a month. And I kept my fingers crossed. What's going to happen? Will they accept my article? At the seminary, we used to get the mail at the dinner table. One of the seminaries we talk about. What do you know? I get nice long envelope, the sign, then the address, and my heart began to pound. I opened it up, spread the paper, a check for $80. Do you know what $80 were in those days? To a poor seminarian. At that moment, I knew that my heart might not take too much credit. Those men helped. The article was actually to be published, and it was. What was the result? Believe me, what the editor wrote, no art up to that moment in the history of the magazine, 50 and more history, had ever been the object of as many letters as were being written to the editor asking for more information, for photographs, for pictures of something. What did the editor do? He would make little packages and send them right over to Turin. We had nothing in English that we could even send to the as a reply to this letter. So we put quickly together the kind of a photograph with just two pictures and no more, and the sketchiest kind of information, and we mailed them out. And we would get replies. Two replies came that literally made me feel the Lord was in doing all this. Guess what? One letter came from Father Edward Winchell. Those of you who have looked into the history of the Shroud know what kind of a man Redemptorist Father Winchell was, extremely scholarly. who wrote to me, I read your article, and I am totally sold to the cause of the Shroud. You send me whatever material in whatever language, because I want to get a copy of this, and eventually who was the master of the Shroud. But the other letter, you never guessed. It came from the editor of the Scientific American, which is a magazine still going very strong, as you know that. I'm sure. And beautifully simply worded, we are very much interested in the article you sent to the Sun. What we would like to do is to have an article on the scientific aspect, which my article touches, so we can publish it. What do I do now? I said, I wrote to Dr. Vignon in Paris, and Dr. Vignon, most I lied, yes, I will write the article, and I am happy to do it. But you will have to do it translated in English. It's no problem, except, of course, that I'm a scientist, and I said to myself, I have to depend on someone else helping me, which was done. The article of the Union appeared in the Scientific American some 5 or 6 months later, but the story is not yet over. The newly born Catholic Digest published the article from the Scientific American. And at that point, things began to happen. What we do now, more letters, more people wanted to know about this thing. And why isn't the book written about all this? In the meantime, most everything that could be said about the Shroud in Italy, in France, and in a small way in the United States had been said. What more? The Shroud had been put away, secreted away in its vault, and would not be shown for who knows how long. And as for getting more scientific information, how can that happen? We got together with Father Otterbein, some of you know him, and we started a little tiny bit of a newsletter. And some 4 or 5 times or 6 times a year, we tried to impress people. But we came to a point where we could say nothing more about the Shroud. And one day at a meeting, Father Otterbein said, we have to do something. We can't just keep going, repeating the same things over and over again. This is ridiculous. I said, there's only one thing to begin to move so the people in Turin realize that they cannot keep this thing hidden forever. Okay, what do we do? And I prayed to the Lord, and one day I called my father after that. I said, Adam, guess what? You know what I thought of doing before I go to Turin? This was 1950. I thought of going to see the owner of the Shroud, former King Umberto of Italy, in exile at Cascais, and listen to him, what will he say. If he favors it, then I can go to Turin and tell His Eminence, he was the bishop, the archbishop who ordained me, or Saki. I can tell him that the king is in favor, and with that, maybe something will start moving. So I went. Can you imagine me? Who am I to go and knock at the door of the king? But anyway, praise the day I did it. And the welcome was unbelievable. Umberto was gentle, everybody gracious man. And when I told him my name, he said, oh, I knew two fathers of the prophets, and now I'm happy to meet the third. I knew one who should have been either your uncle or granduncle, the great priest of Turin. And his name was Philip. I said, yes, it was my grandfather's brother. And I think he was a saint. And I told him, Your Majesty, the Holy See is actually pushing the cause to make him a saint. And he made people in the next years, church, school. Marvelous, he said. And I knew another father, his name was Caesar. I said, Your Majesty, that was my brother. My brother was at the Vatican as a priest, and happened to be in Rome when the dynasty, the Savoy dynasty, collapsed, and Italy became a republic. And he had met Umberto several times. How much more providential could all this be? The king was so kind and gracious. Over the next decades, actually became friends. And he would write to me, are you coming again? No, I am in exile. I welcome people, I never see anybody. Well, what astounded me is that His Majesty should say to me, I have nothing against doing anything with the Shroud, as the church decided to do. Can I quote you, Your Majesty, when I go to Turin? Of course. Well, I went to Turin, and His Eminence of Turin was beginning to be an old man. That was 1773, 74. When I approached him and told him I had come to see the king, when I told him about the tremendous interest in the United States, and how the king was willing to allow a certain, he looked at me and says, Peter, do you know what you are doing to me? I said, what? He said, you're going to kill me. He said, I had two public expositions of the Shroud in 1931 and 33, and I barely survived them. He said, I am an old man. I'll be gone very soon. My successor will do it all. So don't be in a hurry. Would you believe it? He lived for 54 years. And always in those days there was no turn. Now if you're 75, you're out. Except the Pope, everybody else has to step down. And always he came back with the same answer, my successor will do it. As it happened, his successor did it only part of the way. He got it with an agreement, a wonder, a scholar, who valued both the religious and scientific complexities of the Shroud. So what did he do? He said to me, oh, please, 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 don't give me a headache of a public display. This is right after the council. I've got more problems with my archdiocese. The tremendous disarray that came to the church after the council. But I promised that we will do something. Well, about 5 years passed, and then he came back to keep his word. He said, we will not have a public display, but as it was, he did this idea. It was actually over the Eurovision, and the tremendous interest at that point stirred all over Europe. In 1970, it was 73, September 73. You were there. Who else was there? In 1973, what happened was that CBS, the network in the United States, opened to the idea of a half-hour program in 1974 and took several clips from the program shown in Italy, all over Europe, and invited Father Otterbein and Wilcox. We've been in touch with him in this family, who had written a book, and myself. So in between those clips, we would be saying our piece, explaining the complexities of the Shroud. I have just finished writing a little nothing of the book because there was not much to be said. And the book was It Is the Lord. It was published in the United States and published as a special edition in England under the title The Man in the Shroud, which was a very successful venture. I could not believe what I came to know after that edition brought. He used to tell me when I had to get on the book. I was presented as the author of this book on television. The book had sold about, as a hardcover book, about 35,000 copies. Successful. What happened after the television program? The book went into a pocketbook edition. Again, what was there in that book? Look, you read it very quickly. And this began to interest a lot more people than anyone would expect, including some of the future scientists who came into being. Of course, such a wonderful person as Mr. Wilson, even who did so much, never forget the first time we came together. Okay, we have come now to 1974, 75, 76, whatever. The most representative of that group here, without taking any merit, Dr. Herbert, Dr. Adler, Professor Luigi Gonelli, who literally supervised the mental job done by Americans, the Chinese, 1970. And this is what the story is. In this marvelous symposium, incredible exhibit that to stir our interest in his work considerably of Hong Kong. Now you begin to read in my heart the sense of gratitude and joy that I experienced at that time. I come to them. I used to be presented once whenever I do lectures. For some strange reason, the oldest, even when I was young, in my 30s, in my 40s, tended me before I gave a talk at the Shroud would say, the oldest individual interested in the Shroud. I said, you make me feel terribly old, I used to say to them. Well, but the greatest and most dismaying thing happened a short time ago when I gave a talk in the United States, and I was presented as the grand old man of the Shroud. I said, now this literally destroys me, because now I know that I am old, and this is it. Grand old man, what nonsense. Well, what do I feel when I come home to places like this, to events like this? Immensely grateful for the ones I can imagine. In his own mysterious way, he guided things. If Cardinal Fossati had said, okay, His Majesty the King says to move, we'll move, what could have the scientists, what could they have done at that stage in the 1950s? Time was part of the game, and marvelously so. Can I make one more reflection?
As long as you like.
What is it that draws people to the Shroud? I remember that question was asked while we were at dinner one evening at the Cardinal's residence in 1978. Someone, the scientists were actually working on the tests. Someone said, what is it? It had been a rainy day. Thousands of people, 3.5 million people came over a period of 40 days to see the Shroud. 3.5 million people. And that day was one of few miserable days during that display of the Shroud. And yet people were totally, patiently waiting for the chance to enter the cathedral. And for 2 short minutes to stand in front of the Shroud, about 5-6 yards away from the What does it? Someone suggested, well, the face, as has been seen incidentally, practically all of Europe was plastered with the Shroud faces and so forth. That mysterious face has revealed my photography on the Shroud. Was there something to it? Someone else suggested it was the mixing of religious and scientific interest in this one object. But the Cardinal said, I think it goes farther than that. I think it is the Lord. If we all remember our scripture of the gospel, Jesus did say, when crucified, I will draw all men. I think he said that fundamentally that is the reason. I am not one to say what the reason. I can very well. I have had such experiences in my long dealings with the Shroud, in lecturing. It has been fantastically so, and those of you who have lectured there, the reaction of the people was mysterious object. I gave 2 lectures I shall not ever forget. One at Sing Sing prison in New York. Do you know what Sing Sing prison is? Where the electric chair used to be the worst prison in the state of New York. It is now a place where I would not even care to visit again. One becomes so depressed. Criminals, drug addicts, but really the lowest. We hate to speak about low people because we are all children of God sometimes. Well, that lecture to me was again one of the highlights of my life. The way those poor people responded. The governor told me, you have an hour and 15 minutes, beginning at 7 o'clock. We ended at 10 o'clock. Questions that came from all. The interest, the impression, the way they were even unwilling to let me go. They wanted to ask more questions. And how they took the picture I gave each of them. There were some 250 pages. The other lecture was, what is the name of the prison in Connecticut where the
Federal prison?
Yeah. What is the name of the town? Denver. Yeah. Well, that's a different sort of a prison. That's a more intellectual level. I can say that the intelligent crooks go there. And that was quite an experience. I think there were 2 or 3, although I did not personally meet them, of the ones that had gotten involved with the water gate again, you would hardly believe that people with that kind of a background, insane, and men with culture and so forth, would be so easily impressed by things like this, and yet they were. So I'm going to leave the question to each of you. What is it that draws people? And I assure you, it does. Don't you know it, Rex, with your marvelous wit, or Bill, with your wonderful and well-heeled, or Alan, John? Don't you also have experience of Dr. Rinaldi, who does give introductions? And so again, I feel tremendously grateful. Can I make one more question and foolishly try to answer it myself? Maybe some of you answer it better than I can. Okay, this is a very difficult one. What really, we already mentioned this point, and I'd like to go on a little further. Suppose the day will come when science will prove the Shroud a forture, or some sort. What happens? Well, I am so convinced that what matters about the Shroud is not the cloth, is not the medium, but is the person, Christ. I am psychologically, emotionally, if I don't die before, prepared even to hear. I'm speaking to people who are very knowledgeable. Even to hear not an object that dates back to the past. Because just like every one of you here, Christians and even non-Christians, what really matters in the end is the person involved in the act. I do not base my faith on the Shroud. Of course not. I do not cherish, or I do not believe, love the Lord because of the Shroud. But I love the Shroud and cherish it and value it because of the Lord. That face, the version of the sufferings of the man of the Shroud has seen, noticed, evidenced under the law. A version that parallels everything that we read of Jesus in the Gospel. This is what it is. This is what counts. As Cardinal Balestrero said, who incidentally never, in his beautiful exposition, spoke of the Shroud as a relic, never, but always as an image, a sign, signal of the Lord, with a message for every one of us. And I believe, Bill, you tell me I'm wrong in this, in again saying that whatever the final decision of scholarly men and of honest scientists will be, it will matter little if we remember that what matters in the end is the Lord. And on this point, I would like very much to read the beautiful words of Pope Paul VI at the close of their unforgettable TV presentation on the Shroud. Pope Paul VI in 1973 had a message right there on TV. He said, notice, whatever the final judgment of qualified researchers will eventually express, whatever the final judgment qualified researchers will eventually express on the nature and origin of the Turin rebellion, our hope and prayer is that through its amazing image of the Savior, men and women will be drawn to a deeper vision of the Lord's inner figure, that they be drawn to an ever greater appreciation of Him who loved us, and because He loved us, sacrificed Himself for us. Words, whatever the final judgment, qualified researchers will eventually express on the nature and origin of the Shroud. And we are in an Anglican church. And as you probably know, I was extremely close to John T. Robinson, the great scholarly Bishop of England. We correspond there many times. In one of his last letters, I am sorry I did not bring it with me, but I think I can reconstruct it. It's very simple. Until his death was 2 years ago. Yeah. Until his death, notice that he was a great scholar, biblical scholar, one of the greatest in his language. He wrote to me and he said, the quest of the Shroud can only lead to the quest. Would you like to ask?
You will take some questions. Good. We have 15 minutes or so before we need to go.
Any really embarrassing questions? Please. I always want to.
I have one request, Father Rinaldi. I could sit here listening to you talk for hours. You know, you really must write all of this in a book about your experiences on the Shroud. Every detail, everything the king said to you, or
will you speak to the Lord and tell him to give you a chance?
And your book publisher, right?
Okay, what else? Please. Oh, don't tell me I made converts of all of you. The Shroud. I don't expect it. Please.
Future testing, carbon dating, and so forth.
I am not the expert on this. I'm afraid that we'll have to wait and pray fervently. It's what I've been doing lately. Something seems to be moving, very definitely so. My closeness to Turin gives me that. It may be a little premature to be going into details, but that something is actually moving in that direction. Seems to be real. The Holy Father has a personal interest in this. He's equally true. And that even, may I say this without betraying any confidence, even a certain amount of preparation is going on. This is also true. What Any other questions, please? Yeah, please. Well, I was about to tell a story, but I'm afraid I have the wrong place for it.
Any story is good.
I mean, I'm not going to tell a bad joke. No, but here's what happened as an aftermath of that, of the letter that came from the Scientific American. The name of the managing editor was Sheldon R. E. Turin. His wife, a remarkable person, both of them were devout Episcopalians. They were very well-to-do people. They had a home in Palm, neighbors of Kennedy's, Jefferson's family, very close to them. Mr. Shroud Stilney was a Western man of the local Episcopal church. One day I get a letter from Mrs. Stilney, and she says, I cannot fully understand why my husband is not getting excited about the Shroud after publishing the article in the Scientific American, which article ended in the Reader's Digest too. I'm always talking about the Shroud, and he says, stop talking about the Shroud. Anyway, she came in touch with me through Father Weinstein, who had also come into the picture of the Shroud, I told you. And she wrote to her, you're looking for Father Rinaldi. Well, he is in Tampa, Florida, not far away from where you are on the beach. Maybe you would like to go and talk to him. So she came, she called first, and then she came. I didn't know the moon, except that I had been in a relationship with the managing editor of the Scientific American. Okay. We had the Salesian school in Tampa. Both my brother, late brother, and myself had been at the very start. And we were struggling financially. We had set up, this was for a band of youngsters, we had set up a number of shops where these youngsters might learn a trade. And the most successful shop of all was the printing shop. So I said, okay, while we waited for something to happen in theory, maybe I could write a little pamphlet. This has nothing to do with the book that came later, which is the one that was used. And I titled the book, I Saw the Holy Shroud. That book was eventually, that title was used for a later book too. Anyway, the printing shop at which about 20 or so youngsters were working and learning to become printers in the best style of the Salesian tradition, decided to take the book, the pamphlet, as a sort of an experiment to see how far they could go with that printing, or just beginners. So when Mrs. Tilney called that she would come visiting me at the school in Tampa, I was miles away from thinking what would happen. She came in driven in a magnificent Packard, you know, those famous Packards, and with a chauffeur with a captain, chauffeur, which came in, Father Peter, okay. And Mrs. Tilney, terribly interested in the Shroud, and my husband published an article in his magazine, and he's not doing anything about it. And I want to do something about it. I want to publish this. office that the Lord has sent you, Mrs. Dooley. She looked around. She says, this school, beautiful place, lovely school, and the youngsters, 18. And she begins to look around, and we landed in the printing shop. And sure enough, the cover of the pamphlet had been printed. I saw the hooks. You mean you have a printed book house? Yes. But these youngsters are printing the book? Yes. Who's paying for this? Well, Providence. How many copies are you printing? Well, we start with 1,000 copies. I think if it goes better than that, we might even print more. Okay. You have to print at least 25,000 copies. You send me the bill for every expense involved in production. Okay. Then she says, what about lectures? Well, I said, busy man. Okay. I am going to ask you to come to give a lecture in my house in Bunbridge. I will have a very select audience. I was in my first or second year of high school. And I'll send my chauffeur to pick you up. And you will come, and you will give a lecture. Then we are going to push this thing. Okay? There were 50 people at the beautiful home. The lecture was actually held on the patio the evening. And guess who was there? All the Kennedys were there, except the father, who at the time was ambassador in London, Mr. Joseph Kennedy. But I didn't know the Kennedys. Who would you give? But I was struck as I looked over the audience, not too many, 50 or so, to see all these wonderful looking young girls and boys. And I'm sure the future president was among them, because he must have been 19 or shortly before. As it was a marvelous idea. It was actually over the Eurovision, Russia. They were the closest friends of Mrs. Tillman. It was a fantastic lecture. I went back to our school. Guess what? With $5,000 in my pocket. You know what $5,000 were in 1930? $50,000. And she never, ever stopped. She would have a circle of my lectures, Catholic churches, Episcopal churches, not Baptist yet. And she would send her chauffeur and pick me up, and he would pick me up in like these places. One day she calls out, I think these times she had been tremendously generous to our school. And my brother would write to her every time she sent a check. Our youngsters are praying for you and so forth. Okay, she wrote to me, she says, you youngsters have prayed too much. I have become a Catholic. I have become a Catholic. And she did. She literally became a Catholic. And she became tremendous to a lot of good Catholic causes, beginning with the school we had and the Shroud. You remember the beautiful shrine?
I cannot forget it.
The first time she came to Corpus Christi, when she came to herself during the summer to up north, she drove to Portchester. I was pastor then. I had the whole church with the scaffolds. We were doing the work in the church, repainting the church. There was no trace of any picture of the Shroud in the church at all. So she says to me, what are you doing? We're decorating the church. She says to me, you have to find a corner, a place where to put the image of the shroud. Corpus Christi, the name of the church, the body of Christ. If any church should have a picture of the shroud, yours should have it. Okay, I said, we'll find a place. Oh no, she said, this is true. She said, I want a chapel for the shroud. I want a beautiful chapel. Okay. I am going to pay for all the expenses of you decorating the church, only if you promise me that you will have a chapel, a shrine to the Holy Shrine, to the Christ of God. Okay, Mrs. Tilney will do. Okay, I'm closing the story now. When I die, she said, you must come to give me the last rites, not only, but you must also take care of my funeral mass, because the Catholic Church there is filled with beautiful, good Protestants who probably don't know anything much about the Latin Mass. It was still the Latin Mass. And I want every one of them to have the little missal so they can follow the Latin, the missal. Okay? About a year later, the husband comes, my darling wife is back. Please come. Please come. To the end, she received the last rites, but with a spirit of almost cheerfulness. I never saw the like of a person meeting the final God with such a beautiful spirit. And she says, the husband gave me the point and said, I'm telling Father Rinaldi exactly what to do with the Mass at my funeral and so forth. Okay. Then, Sheldon, please leave us. I've got to talk to Father for another minute. So, okay. Open the door, she says to me. Yes, there are two doors. One is for you, and one is for the Salesian place in Rome. Do you remember Father Martin? Boys' village, which was developed into a magnificent place. I said, Mrs. Stingley, you are going to build a school. I know it. And you promised me that you would not forget to build a chapel for the shrine. It's a promise, Mrs. Taylor. But you gave me the money that I didn't. One I know, the other I know. For the Salesian school in Rome for those youngsters. The favorite school of the whole life. Because you don't dare open the emperor there, but to find 50,000. This is from a special fund. Nobody knows about it. And now she said that I'm through. I have not been a Catholic very long. I think I'm trying to be a good Catholic. But for me, I know nothing about purgatory. Will you tell me what This is still purgatory. She said, I know mercifully I've been hand in hell because with all my mistakes and sins, I tried my best. I will not go to heaven immediately because I know God in purgatory. Tell me what it is all about. So I know what to expect. So remembering what my teacher of theology had told me about purgatory, I told her a few simple words. Now, Mrs. Tilney, don't be frightened. We know precious little about purgatory. We know that it's supposed to be a period where we are purified before we get to beatific vision. But one thing we know, that if we do go to purgatory, we will be supremely and blissfully happy because we know we are saved and we are in the hands of the Lord. That's enough. That's all right. Now these are the little happenings, and there are literally hundreds of them that all came as part of this unforgettable experience which you and I know as
Next Father.
Identification, that's the end of that section of the tape with the discussion by Father Peter Rinaldi.